Hey guys! Because it is so freaking cold in my studio, like all the time, like I have the most drafty loft in the whole wide world, my mind has been going towards warmer things. And so today I'm going to teach you guys how to illustrate quilted fabrics. Everything from fishing vests to nylon parkas to Chanel handbags. Quilting is everywhere. And some are done with a really shiny fabric. Some are done with kind of a dull fabric. Everything from like super shiny nylons and leathers to suedes and cottons. And then we have some that are filled, like just stuffed with polyfill. You know, parkas bursting at the seams with stuff. All the way to like, springtime fishing vests with just a little bit of quilting. And I'm gonna teach you how to render all of them, all of them. There are a lot of variations on quilting, how much stuffing there is, what the surface fabric is, but the basic concepts are the same across the board. And so I'm gonna show you those today. The first thing you wanna do is lightly draw in the basic shape. And then when you have the basic shape, you're going to go ahead and fill in with the pattern. I am lightly curving my lines to wrap this garment around the body so that it doesn't look like he's wearing this board of diamonds across his back. Now that you've lightly drawn in the patterns for all your quilting, what you're going to do is draw the silhouette again, keeping in mind the quilting pattern and how puffy the quilting is. So if you have something, let's say that this vest is super puffy in the quilting. So up here, it's not quilted, so his yoke is flat, his collar is flat. Let's say there's tons of quilting in here, and so each piece is gonna stick out really round. I'm gonna emphasize that round puffiness that's going on in this vest. I would add a little bit here, not as much because it is being tightly sewn into this yoke seam. Something like this, also puffy. I have these little hearts in here. Poof, poof, poof. This one, I'm gonna keep it not super puffy, but you're still gonna see the quilting in the outer shape. All right, so now we have our quilted shapes. Go ahead and fill your shape in with color. If you want to learn how to render shiny fabrics, I have a whole video devoted to 3 different techniques depending on the amount of shine. And I have them all in a separate video for you to watch, and I'll drop the link below. But when it comes to shiny quilted fabrics, you're just not going to have the time to leave the white of the paper and to do some of the more extensive styles of shiny renderings for every single one of these little diamonds or all of these little squares. You just don't have time for that. That's crazy. So we're going to use the simplest method to do shiny fabrics for quilting, which is putting in the base fabric color, putting in the shadow color, and then adding a white highlight. I like to marker section by section because it prevents from too much of your pencil edge smearing all around. It also helps to use a hard lead pencil for your underdrawing like this. I'll go in later with like a 2B pencil for finishing details, but the underdrawing is typically done in an HB lead. Graphite. I guess they don't make lead anymore. You know, which is nice because, you know, lead poisoning is not nice. Now that you have filled in each item with the base color, you're going to shadow each and every quilted piece. And if your top fabric is shiny, you're also going to highlight every single piece. So let's start with the not shiny ones. Let's pretend this is an ecru suede bag. And for all of these, let's say that's your light source. So I'm going to take my shadow color and my shadow is going to sit here and here. Dark side of every quilted piece. I've decided already, remember when I was drawing the silhouette, that this one is not super puffy. It's not puffy like this parka or this vest. And so my shadows aren't going to be round. They're going to be really smooth and flat and narrow. And when you do your shadows, the closer you are to the light source, the smaller your shadows are going to be. So since my light source is over here, on this side, my shadows are really small. And over here is where my shadows get the biggest. I'm going to have I like to put shadows into the crease because that little valley gets a shadow. Yeah, as you get closer to the light source, your shadows get a little bit smaller. Because this is suede, I like to add a little bit of that soft fuzzy texture. So I'm going to take a color pencil and just add a little bit of that texture. And kind of soften those shadow transitions so that it's not so graphic looking. So you have like an overall softer look. The last step is to figure out your top stitching color. So the way quilting is made is you have your top fabric, you have your polyfill, and then you have your bottom fabric. And your bottom fabric, it can be like a nice lining, or it can be like a inexpensive interfacing if the whole garment is going to be lined anyway. And the 3 layers are pressed down, and then everything is top stitched together into the pattern. And so you can choose your top stitch thread, you can choose a contrast color, and then so I would pick a color pencil in that top stitch color. If it's a self top stitching, you know, I can go back and use this color pencil again, or I can use a soft pencil lead. And I would emphasize the shapes. You know, I'm going to drop a little shadow behind the handles. And there is your thinly quilted suede handbag. Now, if you have something matte like cotton or suede and you want to make it super, super puffy, the only difference would be your shadows have a much rounder shape. And then when you go in with your top stitching, you're going to create much more rounded, like little pillow shapes, like this. Again, your light source is over here, so your shadows are going to be larger on this side and then smaller as you get closer to your light source. And again, I'm using the color pencil to give me that soft textured look of suede or nubuck. You know, if you were just doing a simple non-textured cotton, you can choose a marker instead, and you could do that too. And then again, you're going to take your top stitching color and you're going to go in, and I'm going to make these little cushions really round so that they look super puffy. You know, round those corners. You know, exaggerate a little. You can exaggerate a little bit because with the illustration, you know, if you're really pushing an effect, you can go ahead and exaggerate a little bit. Right? And you see how round and plush and soft and bouncy that looks. And even here, I see how 3D that looks, how puffy that looks compared to these areas where we didn't do anything at all. Here's a shiny one. Again, your light source is here. I'm going to take my shadow color. I'm going to shadow a little bit here because of that poofing happening, right? Poof, 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 poof. If you are unfamiliar with the techniques that I use for shadowing, I have a whole video on how to create shadows. And I'll drop a link in the info box. Go ahead and check it out. Super poofy. Now, because this is a shiny fabric, I'm not going to go in with color pencil and soften the shadows or anything like that. I am, however, going to take a white color pencil and add highlights. So opposite places of the shadows facing the light are going to get the highlights. So, you know, the top of this heart and, you know, this shoulder, this part of her collar facing the light, and this part of her shoulder, top of this heart. A little less so over here because it's so far away from the light. But these are really the areas where you're going to get a lot of highlight. These welt pockets are not puffy. They would just be made flat. And then again, I'm going to go in and pop everything out with pencil and make sure everything looks just cute and puffy. You know, little girls, they have to stay warm when they go play outside and, you know, pummel boys with snowballs. This is a very important business. God, I love this parka. Somebody go make this for me. I know you think she looks all demure with her hands behind her back, but you know what she's really doing is she's hiding a snowball in her hand, and she's going to smack you with it. You know, just make all those shapes nice and round so that everything looks all poofy, stuffed with polyfill, maximum warmth. And then I like to take a white gel pen and, you know, add a few extra shine bits in the draping, on the tops of all the poofing. Anytime you use wet media like a gel pen on top of dry media like a color pencil, you gotta like wipe some of that crap off so you're cleaning it out. Otherwise the liquid won't flow. Oh my god, that's so cute. I want a heart parka. Now, this one is not going to introduce really any new information. It is a shiny black leather quilted bag that doesn't have a whole lot of stuffing in it. And so, you know, when you draw your shapes, they're not going to be super round and puffy like this. They're going to be a little bit more square like these pieces. And you're going to highlight and shadow every single piece, just like you've been doing, like here. It's even going to show up even more because it's black. But I wanted to show you guys a black example so that you get a little taste of how to handle black. I'm going to do a whole video in the future on how to work with black fabrics because there are a lot of tips and tricks I want to teach you guys. But there's a lot of black quilted handbags out there, and so I really wanted to do this for you guys. So in this situation, the first thing I would do is cover the whole thing in a light black. Now, some of you may think I'm crazy, but there are such things as light blacks and dark blacks. It really depends on the marker brand, but some blacks are a little bit on the softer side. This is a Chart Pack Super Black, and lo and behold, it is a super black. Like, it is literally darker black color. You know what is also a great black? Sharpie. Sharpie black markers are super black. They're like extra, extra super black. Except sometimes on certain papers, when you kind of like tilt the paper, you get this kind of like red shine to it. So sometimes I don't love using it, especially on shiny papers like marker paper. But with blacks, I like to pop the details with white pencil. In my magical fantasy universe, there is a thing called a mechanical white color pencil because I do a lot of little white drawn details on dark color garments. And you guys know how much I hate sharpening my pencil. It is the worst. I know, my life is so hard. I always like to lay down a piece of paper so that I'm not smudging my drawing underneath. So I'm going to start with the top stitching just so I can see what the hell I'm doing. And then I'm going to take my Superblock and I'm going to shadow all my little squares. And again, this one is not super puffy, so I'm going to keep my quilting shadows pretty narrow. They're almost like little L's on these pieces. And again, I'm just gonna make these shadows a little bit bigger, away from the light. And then I'm going to take my white color pencil and I'm going to highlight every single square. And again, my highlights are going to be bigger, closer to light. So over here, it's going to be a lot of white. And again, keep your shapes a little bit more geometric looking because you don't want to make it round. You don't want to make your shapes round so that they look puffy. So my highlights are getting softer as you get away from the light. All right, so you're starting to see it look 3D, but again, not round poofing, but, and if I want to, I can just kind of emphasize the shapes and top stitching a little bit more, you know, switch to your, and then again, you can pop in some super highlights if you want that pop. There you go. Shiny and matte, super poofy, more on the flat side, however you want to do it. Basically, you draw the basic shape of your garment, lay down your quilting pattern, redraw the silhouette, adjusting for the quilting pattern and how poofy you want it. Fill your garment in with your base fabric color. Highlight and shadow each shape of your quilting according to your fabric and your light source. And then go back in with your top stitch color and emphasize each shape according to how poofy you want it. And you will get very 3D looking quilted garments. If you have any questions, drop me a comment below. You know I always love hearing from you guys. If you have a specific garment that has a really cool quilting or really weird shape or something that you want some pointers on, send me an image at teaching@zoehong.com and I'll try to figure it out for you. You know, as always, I always appreciate your support. So thank you so much for all of your shares and your subscribing and your following and your liking and your hearting and all that business. Thank you. And I will see you next time.